Hey guys, so today we're going to dive into the basic concepts behind a modular design system using blueprints inside of Unreal Engine. And we're going to take a look at it from the perspective of wall variations when you're constructing a building. So let's say we're designing a map with a building, and we start with a solid wall. Well, what if we need that wall to have a window? Or what if we need that wall to have a door? Using Blueprint in Unreal, it's actually really easy for us to build a simple system that will allow us to quickly switch out these wall types on the fly. And what's even better is that once you know how to do this, you can apply this concept to anything that you can imagine that can make use of variations. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so to get started with this task, we're going to use one main data type that's going to help us out here, and that's called an enumeration, or Enum for short. But what exactly is an enumeration? Well, an enumeration is a set of values where you have an integer that is tied to a string. Or in other words, you have a number that is tied to a word. So let's look at an example. Let's say we have an enum of 1, 2, and 3. Now we can have 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2, and 3 equals 3. Of course, we could also have something like 1 equals red, 2 equals green, and 3 equals blue. We could even add a 4 in there equals alpha if you wanted to go RGBA. But of course, these don't have to be related at all, because these are just a set of values where the number is equal to the word. So we could, for example, say 1 equals koala, 2 equals banana, and 3 equals fire truck. Completely unrelated things, unless you happen to have a koala eating a banana in a fire truck, but that is a story for another time. Now, enumerations are really powerful in programming, and they're really powerful in Unreal. And one of the greatest things about an enumeration inside of Unreal is that when you're using an enum as a variable in a blueprint, it shows up as a drop-down box in the details panel. So you can very easily just go in and select the drop-down box and select what item you want from it. This is really powerful when you're trying to do some kind of variations with your blueprints. So let's go ahead and dive in and get started on this. See you in Unreal. All right, here we are inside of Unreal Engine 5.1. I've created a new project using the blank template from the games category. I did include the starter content, and this is going to be really important right here because inside of the starter content, there's this folder called architecture, and this is going to have the meshes that we're going to use for our system here. If we go ahead and dive into this folder, we can see we've got some wall types over here, a solid one, a window one, and a door one. So first off, right off the bat, let's go back up to content here, and then I'm going to go up here to file, new level, and I'm just going to select basic. Go ahead and hit create. There we go. Now we want to start creating our folder structure, and we want to save this map right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is in content, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to new folder, and I'm going to call this modularity, just like that. Now inside of modularity, I'm going to right click and do new folder again, and this time I'm going to type maps. So this is going to be the folder where we're going to save this map right here. So right off the bat, go up to File, come down to Save Current Level As, make sure we're inside of this Maps folder, and I'm going to call this Modularity Demo, just like that. So I'll hit Save, and there we go. Now we can see that it is in this folder. All right, next up, let's go ahead and look at these architecture pieces that we have available. So back up in Content, Starter Content, Architecture, we'll see that we have a few wall pieces here. We have a couple of different sizes. We have 400 by 300 and we have 400 by 400. Now 400 is the width in both of these. In this one, it's 300 tall. In this one, it's 400 tall. We're gonna go ahead and stick with the 400 by 400 just to keep it as a kind of consistent square. All right, so let's just have a look at these real fast. I'm going to drag this out into the world like that. There we go. If I drag the door one and I drag the window one, we'll see these three different variants that we're going to be working with here. And we're going to be setting up a blueprint that's going to let us easily switch between those. So for now, let's go ahead and select all of them and delete. Okay, so now go into our content back in our modularity folder here. And now I'm going to create another new folder and I'm going to call this blueprint, just like that. Now, inside of this blueprint folder, I'm going to right click and go up to blueprint class. Now, what type of blueprint class are we going to do? We're just going to do an actor, the top one here, simple one. So I'll click on that. We'll see this new blueprint pop up. I'm going to call it BP underscore modular wall, just like that. Now, if I were to drag this out into the world, we'll see that nothing is there but the icon itself, and that's because we haven't actually added anything to this yet. So let's go ahead and do that now. If I double click to open this up, there we go. Here in the blueprint editor, the first thing that I'm going to do is come over here to the components section. I'm going to click this add button and come down here to static mesh. And then here, I'm just going to type in wall mesh, just like that. Now we have this mesh here, but currently there is nothing in it. And if we look over here on the details side, and we find the static mesh section, we'll see static mesh, and currently it is set to none. If we were to click on this drop down, we can see all the different static meshes in this project that we could assign to this, but that can be a little bit cumbersome. So for now, let's unmaximize that. I'm going to go into my content folder, back into starter content, architecture, and we're gonna grab this wall 400 by 400. Now, when I do that, with that selected in the content browser, if I come back into my blueprint, come down to static mesh, and we see this little arrow here, use selected asset from content browser. If I were to click on this, that's going to assign this wall right here. So now if I were to hit compile, we'll see that this particular blueprint here now has this wall assigned. So next up, before I do anything else, I want to look at the snapping tools inside of Unreal here. And this is going to be really important when we're working with modular pieces. So if we look in the viewport, up in this upper right hand area here, we're going to see all of these little things. What we want to look for is the one that has this little grid symbol right here. Now, this is for movement. When I have this selected and it'll be blue, that means that snapping is turned on. So you can see right now, if I were to Alt drag this out, we can see how it jumps as I move it. But if I were to click this and turn it off so that it's gray, we'll see that it's free moving. Now, this is a little bit more difficult to line things up, and you don't want to actually spend the time to go in here and try and line this stuff up. That's going to be too hard. So it's much easier to work with snapping on. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy. I'm going to turn on snapping. And if we look next to that icon, we'll see this number. Right now I have mine set to 100. This is the amount of units, or in this case centimeters, that the object is going to snap to as we move it. So if you look at this drop down, it can be as small as 1 for 1 centimeter. We could have something like 10. We can see this very small step size. We can set it to 50, a little bit bigger. We can set it to something like 5,000. And you'll see, we'll have to zoom out to get these really large snap sizes. But since these walls are 400 by 400, our best bet is going to be 100, since there isn't a 400 snapping size. So we'll do 100, and that means if I were to hold down Alt and hover over this and drag a duplicate out, we can see how nice and easy this guy snaps right up to this. So now can drag another one out while holding Alt and create a sort of wall system over here, kind of a building. So then I could rotate it like that, get myself a little corner there. All right, so that with the snapping is going to be really important for this modularity. All right, now let's get into building out this blueprint. So if I come over here to my modularity folder, I'm going to go back into blueprint here. And now I'm going to right click and create another new folder. I'm going to call this helpers. Now, if I go inside this folder and right click, we're going to do something a little bit different this time. Instead of going up to Blueprint Class, we're going to come over here to the Blueprint section under Create Advanced Asset. We'll get a little flyout, and we're going to come down to this enumeration here. Now, if I click on that, I'm going to call this E_wall types, just like that. If I double click to open it up, we'll get a new type of window. And we'll see this button here. It says Add Enumerator. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you'll see now we have this section called Enumerators with one entry in it. We have a display name and we have a description. Now, we're not going to worry about description right now. Description is if you need to have tooltips inside of your engine. What we're worried about is the display name. So for here, what we're going to do is we're going to type in standard wall with Pascal casing, all one word. When we're working with the enumerator here, we do need this to be one word, no spaces. So we use the Pascal casing where we have the first letter of each word capitalized. So now we have a single entry in this enumeration called standard wall. If I click this 2 more times, it's going to add 2 more. Let's go ahead and call the second one window wall. And we'll call the third one door wall, just like that. Click the little save icon. There we go. Now we can go back over to our BP modular wall. So what we need to do now is we're going to come over here to variables. And under variables, we're going to click on the plus sign to add a new one. And I'm going to call this wall type. Now, by default, it's going to create it as a Boolean. We don't want this to be a Boolean. We want to actually set this Boolean, this variable type, to our enumeration that we just created. So how we're going to do that is we click on the drop down, and we'll see that it doesn't show up in this list here. It will show up under Enum if we were to drop this down. You can see it right there. But a lot of times it's going to be difficult to find your custom data types like this in that list. So a way we can find it is we can just go up here to the search box, going to type in wall, and now we can see our wall types over here. So if I select that, we can't set a default value until we compile. So let's come over here to our compile button up here. We'll click that, and then we'll see now our wall type variable is a drop down with our 3 options that we created for it. So if I were to come over here to variables, and we're going to find this little eye icon over here on the right side of it. Right now it's a closed eye. If I click it, it'll be an open eye. If I were to hit compile, then now if we come into here and we select one of these, we'll see over here in the details panel under default, we now have wall type and we have this drop down. Right now, changing it doesn't do anything because we haven't actually set anything up. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. We'll go back into our blueprint, and we want to go into our construction script here. Now, if you ever accidentally close this guy out and you can't find it, you just come over here on this left-hand side and you go to functions and you find construction script. We're going to double click that, and it's going to open it back up for you. All right, so now what we need to do is we're going to click and drag wall type out into our graph. Now for this, we want to get it. We don't want to set it, we want to get it. And now we get to see this really cool thing that Blueprint lets us do with enumerations. If I click on this little open circle here and drag out and then let go, and then we type in switch, we'll find this option called switch on e_wall types. And if we click on that, it's going to create a node for us that is going to have some very familiar outputs. You'll see that these outputs here are the same ones that we created for our enumeration. So they tie in to whatever we have selected in the dropdown. So let's go ahead and drag out from our construction script to plug it in there. And now the next thing that's going to happen in this blueprint is whatever this variable happens to have selected, whatever it's set as, the blueprint will choose to follow that path. So the default here, standard wall, is going to be one path, window wall would be another, door wall would be another. So what do we want to do when that changes? Well, we want to actually change the mesh that is being used. How we're going to do that is we're going to come up here to our components. We're going to find our wall mesh. We're going to drag this out in here. And what you'll notice is that when I drag it out, it doesn't give me the option to get or set it. And that's because you can't actually set it like this when it's a component over here. So in order to change what this mesh is, we need to drag off of this node. And if I were to type in set, we're going to find this set static mesh. Now what this node is going to do is it's going to take this mesh and it's going to set it to whatever we happen to set here. So if I drag out and plug it in there, and then we hit compile, now everything goes away. And that's because when we have standard wall selected, it's going to set the static mesh to nothing. Of course, if we were to come over here and change this to window wall, suddenly we get our standard wall back. The reason for that is because we don't have anything happening when we change this, and we have our default here set to that wall. So let's go ahead and clear that now. If I, with wall mesh selected under static mesh, I find this little back arrow button. I'll go ahead and click that, and now it's going to reset this to none. So now what I want to do is I'm going to drag over this. I'm going to hit Control D, and it's going to duplicate those two nodes. Now, if you're using Unreal Engine 4, that hotkey is actually Control W, but in Unreal Engine 5, it's Control D. So if I were to do this one more time, now I have 3 sets, and I'll just plug in each one of these just like that. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to actually set these. So let's go ahead and go into our content, starter content, architecture, and we want to make sure that we're grabbing the right things here. So for the standard wall, I want this wall 400 by 400. So I can, with it selected in the content browser, come up here to this node and click the little arrow, use asset browser selection, and that'll assign it there. We come down to window wall, and I want this wall window 400 by 400. We'll assign that there. And then for door wall, we're going to do the same thing with the door. We'll select it in the content browser and we'll assign it in the node. Now, if I were to hit compile like that, we'll see that our walls come back. And if I were to select this one and then change this drop down to window wall, suddenly it changes here. If I come to this one and change it to door wall, that'll change it there. And what you can see in your blueprint graph here is when you select this standard wall, it's going to go this way. When you select window wall, it's going to follow this window wall path. And when you select door wall, it's going to follow this door wall path. Pretty simple, right? So what is the use case of this? Why would we ever want something like this? Well, let's say you've got a setup like this and, you do some play testing, or your designers come in and, you just find that you need to switch things around a bit. Well, let's say we need to put the door here. Well, I can just now select it and go to door wall. There we go. Set this one to a window wall. Set this one to a window wall, and there you go. But then maybe they don't want to have the window right up against this corner, so everything needs to be shifted over again. So it's really quick and easy to just change this to a door, this to a window, this to a standard wall, and then maybe we'll turn this one to a window as well. So setting up a system like this using enumerators for your selections makes it really easy to do some quick iterations on a process like this.